Israel's intensifying assaults on Gaza have alienated even its staunchest allies over the past week, with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz calling the airstrikes on Tuesday no longer comprehensible. The unprecedented condemnation by Germany comes 3 weeks after Israel's Security Cabinet approved Operation Gideon's Chariot, with the aim of seizing total control of the Gaza Strip. Gaza's health ministry announced 79 more people were killed in the past 24 hours, bringing Gaza's known death toll over 54,000 since the start of the war. This count started hours after the bombing of Fahmy al-Jajawi school on Monday, in which 36 people were killed while taking shelter in the building. Israel said the bomb targeted a Hamas control center. Middle East Eye spoke to a 5-year-old survivor whose mother and 6 siblings burnt to death in the blaze.
طلعت من النار والنار حرقتنا من ايديا وكان واقع علي السقف. انا قلت انت عمتي بعدين ما عرفتش امشي على النار وتول اسعفها كل ما تتصورش عشان ايدك ما ترجعكيش حتى عشان تقعي ايديا مجرحين. مولعت النار ما قدرتش امشي بالمدرسة. بعدين انا قلت المدرسة اتصورت. بعدين ماما وبابا راحوا على الشفا وماما كانت مستشفى. أختي الصغيرة الله يرحمها استشهدت. عابد ومحمد وأمل وأختي ماريا وسلوان وبس كانوا استشهدوا إلا أنا. نفسي بخواتي.
Children account for at least half of those killed in that strike. And over 17,000 children have now been killed in total, as aid groups warn a further 930,000 children are at risk of famine due to severe aid restrictions by the Israeli military. Dr. Victoria Rose is a British senior plastic and reconstructive surgeon who has been on multiple medical missions to Gaza since October the 7th and is currently working at Nasser Hospital in the south of the Strip. Victoria, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You've been in Gaza
Sorry about the chaos in the background.
That's all right. Perfectly understandable. Victoria, you've been in Gaza at different stages of this war, and now we are seeing perhaps the most intensive offensive yet from Israel. Does it feel as though it's intensified, and what does that look like from where you're standing?
It feels absolutely crazy here. It's the worst I've ever seen it in Gaza. We are struggling to keep up with the work. It's just non-stop. We are getting patient after patient after patient through the door. We're unable to keep up with the dressing changes, the debridements. I see people that I want to add to the list. There's no space. People are waiting days before I can get them on the operating table. It's never, ever been like this before. We are absolutely rammed and we are running out of supplies.
This increased need, of course, is coming in the context of a blockade that's causing severe shortages of supply. How do you prioritize? What do you prioritize and what gets missed when you have to prioritize?
Well, we've been doing a bit of a scrap heap challenge on the kit that we've got, but we're now at that stage where the items that we're short of are not items that we can substitute. So they are scalpel blades and cleaning solutions before we operate, and gauze. Gauze is our massive issue at the moment. At NASA now, they have removed gauze swabs from all of the wards, and they are only allowed to be used in the emergency department and the operating room. And we were told we have a box that should last us until the end of this week, and we are just praying that we get some more aid delivered to us before then, because without this, we cannot continue to operate.
Gaza is said to be the deadliest place on earth to be a child. We're seeing a child killed every 45 minutes. And of course, many more injured. 57 children are known to have died from starvation. 71,000 children under 5 are at risk of acute malnourishment. How many patients coming into your care are children as an overall proportion? And how are you meeting this need?
It's at least 50%, and they are quite young children. So they are children between the ages of 2 and 10. We are really struggling with the children more than anything because they are the ones that have been hit the hardest by malnutrition. So they are suffering horrific blast injuries, and we are trying to clean those injuries and close them in a timely fashion. But because of the malnutrition, they do not have the resources to heal these wounds. And worse than that, they are more susceptible to infection. And at the moment, we only have 3 antibiotics here at NASA, and none of them are the antibiotics that I would routinely use in the UK for these types of wounds. So the children are really suffering with infection. We lost a 4-year-old last week to overwhelming sepsis, and that is a preventable death. That would not have happened if that child had been in the UK.
Are you also seeing military injuries with the children coming in for surgeries and treatment?
All we're seeing in the children is blast injuries. I had child after child after child that has had their knee blown off, their arm blown off, their hand blown off. We have a girl upstairs at the moment that's had both her legs blown off. It's horrific, the injuries these children are suffering from.
I believe that Gaza now has the largest cohort of child amputees in the world. But of course, there's the additional problem of psychological trauma. You said in the past that psychological trauma can actually slow down or prevent a child's physical recovery. Is that a problem you're seeing? And can you explain that to us?
It's stress. It's the stress that causes a reduction in wound healing capacity, and it's something that we're very aware of in the medical profession. A lot of these children are absolutely distraught by the fact that they have lost their families in the blast injuries that they survived. We see so many children here that have been orphaned. There are 42,000 orphaned children in Gaza at the moment, and a huge number of children who have one sole survivor in their family. At the moment, on our ward upstairs, we have 2 brothers who both have devastating injuries to their lower limbs, and they are both the only members of their family. The issue is that they are so distraught from the loss that they've suffered that their reserves are lowered even further. So this is the additional problem that we're seeing in the children.
Victoria, your colleague, Dr. Ala Al-Najjar, lost 9 of her 10 children in an airstrike on Friday while she was on shift. I believe her husband and her surviving son are being treated at your hospital. Can you give us any update on this situation or anything that you would like to share in response to it?
Yes, I operated on Adam today. He's got an injury to his right arm. So basically, the explosion has taken a massive chunk out of his left arm. He's got a fracture of his humerus, which my orthopedic colleagues have fixed with an external frame. And I've repaired, myself and my colleague Tom repaired his radial nerve today. He's also had a significant head injury, although somebody of his age is likely to make a good recovery from that. So we're very hopeful. But he's peppered in shrapnel injuries. So he is somebody that we will be seeing again before we leave.
These attacks on children and these attacks on medics and medics' homes, it seems that no one is safe. 1,400 healthcare workers have been killed in Gaza, many others abducted and tortured. I believe over 100 are currently known to be in Israeli detention. Do you fear for yourself and for your Palestinian colleagues in particular?
I really fear for my Palestinian colleagues because they have got no way out of this at the moment. So they're here for the duration. We've had an evacuation order last week that was really worrying, and actually 4 of our theatre staff had to leave the theatre complex to go and evacuate their families because they were all living in that area. I am the most concerned I've ever been about my own safety. I think this is the first time where I've really worried. The active fighting zone is about 1.5 kilometers from us now. I'm hopeful that the IDF are aware that there are about 20 foreign doctors here at NASA, and that is Americans, British, French, Egyptian. So I would hope that they would be sensible enough to know that taking out this part of NASA at the moment would lead to some unrest from a lot of other countries, but that hasn't really stopped them before. So it is just hope. But yeah, it is definitely the worst it's ever been at the moment.
Victoria, thank you for your time. I understand it's precious. Before we lose you, there is one update I'm wondering if you can help us with. I'm not sure whether you're aware, but Israel's new aid plan came into action today, facilitated by a US-based private organization. Already, we're seeing scenes of chaos at the distribution in Rafah, not too far from you, including military gunfire. Is there anything that you're able to tell us about this situation?
There's nothing I'm able to tell you, as I haven't really had chance to catch up with the news. But the one thing I can say is I have no idea why we need a second company to come into Gaza to distribute food aid when the United Nations and the WHO were doing this fantastically in the past. The only issue that the United Nations and the WHO have had is that Israel have hampered their operation. If they were allowed to work freely, we don't need anyone else delivering aid to Gaza. These organizations have been doing it for a very long time and are very good at it.
Thank you. We do have some footage from the ground, but as you've said yourselves, that there are so few journalists in Gaza, or so few journalists allowed into Gaza who are not Palestinian and are not being discredited by Israel, that it falls upon doctors like yourself to be reporters for news outlets like us. Dr. Victoria Rose, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
The intense violence now unfolding in Gaza coincides with the launching of a new aid plan that has descended into chaos. Israeli soldiers fired warning gunshots at starving Palestinians after US security contractors lost control of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation's first aid operation. Thousands of Palestinians stormed the site of the distribution, which was being policed by Israeli soldiers and private US mercenaries using weapons and barbed wire fencing. The controversial non-profit launched operations today, despite lacking the support of experienced humanitarian groups who have refused to comply with the US and Israeli-backed operation. On Thursday's programme, UN spokesperson James Elder explained to us their reasons for objecting.
The capacity isn't there. The distribution points are not there. There's no discussion about medicines, anesthetics. What we know is that they seem to be a private sector, not a charity, a private sector organization designed to support the forced displacement of people from the north to the south against every single humanitarian principle, and utterly unworkable.
The man who was supposed to lead this pilot project, former US Marine Jake Wood, resigned on Sunday, echoing external criticisms that the group did not fulfill the principles of humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence. The foundation rejected this and pledged to feed 1 million Palestinians by the end of the week. But Palestinian journalist Mohammed Shahada warned us people in Gaza would not be comfortable retrieving aid under the conditions the group had set.
Every single person I spoke to in Gaza said one has to be completely insane, out of their minds, to step a foot in those heavily militarized concentration camps that Israel is setting up in Rafah, where you have to pass through numerous checkpoints with Israeli genocidal soldiers teaming around it, waiting to ambush whoever they want. And you have to pass through facial recognition technology, fingerprinting, different layers of screening and vetting with undisclosed criteria. And at the end of it, you have to literally walk from Beit Hanun, 41 kilometers to Rafah, to pick up a package that would weigh 20 to 40 kilos, and then 41 kilometers back under constant bombardment, thinking that you will make it back alive, Nobody in Gaza thinks that if you step a foot in those compounds, you will make it back home alive on your feet. Either you will be killed on the way, you will be kidnapped by the Israeli soldiers, you will be blackmailed into collaborating with Israel, or the food that you would get would be looted on.
In a yet unreleased interview, MEE news editor Sondos Asim also spoke to UNRWA chief Philippe Lazzarini, who went a step further in explaining Israel's intentions with this new aid plan. He repeated the criticism that aid was being used to displace Palestinians through the south, but added that the intention was to displace them permanently by introducing a new aid model that undermines one of Israel's greatest political threats in the region, UNRWA. UNRWA, which stands for the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East, validates the refugee status of Palestinians in territory now occupied by Israel, and therefore, by extension, it validates their right to return home. Here's Philippe Lazzarini speaking to our reporter Sondos Asim in Geneva.
It's a plan which falls short to align or abide to basic humanitarian principles such as independence, impartiality, but also humanity. What we know about this foundation is that they are opening now 4 different secure areas in the south of Gaza where people would be asked to go once they have been vetted and cleared to pick up the assistance for their household and from this place to go back where they're currently living. What does it mean? Until now, we had more than 400 distribution places in Gaza. The assistance were brought where the people are. Now with the new system, the people are asked to go in 4 different locations, which means it is forcing the people to move from where they are and in fact to regroup around this distribution cluster. So it becomes an instrument of a forced displacement of the population. And we know today, and it has been clearly stated, that one of the objectives of the ongoing military operation is to force the population to move from the north to the south. Secondly, the system itself requires people vetted, cleared, so not everybody will be able to go, which means number of people will be discriminated when it comes to the humanitarian assistance, but also you need to be in a good health to be able to walk hundreds of meters, if not kilometers, to go to pick up your parcel of food and to go back to your family, which also de facto would eliminate from the distribution scheme the female head household, for example, or the most vulnerable or elderly people in the Gaza Strip. So for all this reason, because the aid is not being provided where the people are and where they're in need, it is not possible for an humanitarian organization which truly respect basic humanitarian principle to adhere to such a scheme.
Practically speaking, do you think it's not going to work? Is it going to succeed in its declared mission?
I mean, practically speaking, I doubt that this will, if the intent is to provide humanitarian assistance to all the population in need in Gaza, I do not think that such a model will succeed. But this model seems also to be put in place in order to support, I would say, more a military objective than a real humanitarian concern.
And the announcement of this plan has also been coupled with very clear declarations of intention by Prime Minister Netanyahu, for example, yesterday, that he intends to fully reoccupy the entire Gaza Strip. What do you make of these statements right now? And as a humanitarian concerned with the plight of Palestinian refugees, do you think it's a prelude to a second Nakba?
Well, I mean, the weeks to come will tell us how the situation will unfold, but indeed, we hear about the intent of a full military occupation. We hear about the intent to force the entire population currently in the north of the Gaza Strip to go down to the south of Gaza Strip. And we also hear the intent from members of the current Security Cabinet to push after that the people in the south outside of Gaza. So for the Palestinian, indeed, leaving their land, or if Gaza is no land for Palestinians anymore, it will be considered by them as being their second Nakba.
How is the status of UNRWA right now inside Gaza, and we'll talk later about the West Bank as well? Given that most of your premises have already been attacked or destroyed by the Israeli army over the past 19 months, 1,300 of your employees have been killed in bombardment. How are you functioning in Gaza right now? How many staff members do you have?
Yeah, that's true that our staff are working and operating under extreme, I would say, adverse and hostile environment. As of today, we have more than 310 staff who have been killed since the beginning of the war in October 2023. We have more than 200 premises which have been damaged or completely destroyed. We have operations which have been attacked. We had staff having been arrested and tortured. We even had 2 weeks ago a staff who has been summarily executed, along 15 medics from the Palestinian Red Crescent. So it's an extraordinary, I would say, hostile environment. And now it is true that UNRWA has been and continue to be under unabated political attack. There are a number of disinformation campaigns taking place. There are even a commercial campaign paid by the government taking place with the aim to try to discredit the agencies, because we know that today the objective for the Israeli government is to dismantle the agency, and the real reason behind it is because they want once for all to strip the Palestinian from the refugee status, with the belief that if this happens, it will put an end once for all to the question of the right of return.
That was UNRWA Chief Philippe Lazzarini, interviewed by MEE's news editor Sondos Asim. You can listen to the full-length interview on the upcoming episode of her podcast, Expert Witness. Israel has said that the new aid plan, which gives Israeli military oversight of access, is necessary to prevent aid getting into the hands of Hamas. But speaking on CBS on Sunday, Director of the World Food Programme Cindy McCain rejected this claim and said chaos during food distributions are due to Palestinians starving to death rather than Hamas or organised crime.
Have you seen evidence that it is Hamas stealing the food?
No, not at all. Not in this round. Listen, these people are desperate, and they see a World Food Program truck coming in, and they run for it. This doesn't have anything to do with Hamas or any kind of organized crime or anything. It has simply to do with the fact these people are starving to death. And so we will continue to go in. We will continue to go in with food and the kinds of supplies we need to help the bakeries operate and make sure that we can continue to do that and hopefully be able to do more of it. But again, we can't do this unless the world community puts pressure on this. We can't be allowed to sit back and watch these people starve to death with no outside diplomatic influence to help us.